Throughout all of history, there is one thing that seems to be almost universal, and that's dragons.
Dragons.
What is it?
Dragon! Dragon! Descending a real dragon to retrieve Mulan.
I'm a real dragon!
Regardless of east or west, there are thousands of legends that speak of dragons in various shapes and sizes and what they can do. But before we get into this, I just want to put this out there. When I say dragon, I'm talking about everything that resembles a large reptilian animal, from serpents, dinosaurs, and even wyverns. This is because not everybody is going to differentiate between them, and it's easier just to call them all dragons. Also, the word dinosaur wasn't around until 1841, so any text that predates this isn't going to have any other word for it. Also, at the end of each story, I'm going to reveal who these characters in history were, but if you think you know beforehand, feel free to let me know in the comments. The Dragon and the Princess. Somewhere between the 3rd and 4th century, a man who was believed to be a military leader of sorts was traveling through the world on his own until he happened upon this village. As he got settled a little better, he got to talking with some of the people of the small village, and they realized they had a very unique problem. These people were being terrorized by this large, horrifying beast, and they didn't know what else to do but to feed it to get it to go away. So he came to this realization that this beast was in fact a dragon. So every so often when this dragon would arrive in town, the people who lived here would give it offerings of cattle to subdue its hunger and live another day. The only problem was that now they had trained this beast to know that if it was hungry and wanted something to eat, it knew where to go. And as this man arrived in this village and heard of what was happening, he also came to the terrifying realization that there was no more cattle in this town. There wasn't a single donkey, goat, or cow in sight, and when they were asked about what they were going to do, they had to resort to offering up human sacrifices to get the dragon to go away. The way that they would do this is essentially like a death raffle. Everyone who lived in this small village, including royalty, would all have their name put into a raffle, and when it was time for the dragon to eat, they'd have a name selected, and that person would then be fed to the dragon. And as you can expect, this man was deeply disturbed by what was happening here, but without many options, there wasn't much anyone could do. And as it so happens, when this man had arrived, the next offering was already being led to the dragon's cave, and it turns out that this next offering was the king's daughter. So the man basically says that this has to stop and offers to slay the dragon. So he goes and he intercepts the company of men leading the princess to her death, and he encounters this dragon. Not much is known about the dragon or how it was slain, but there are numerous depictions of this man on his horse slaying the dragon. This man is no other than the incredible St. George, the patron saint of England. This legend was said to have happened in the late 200s, and sadly St. George would be decapitated for his beliefs in Christianity in the year 303, a religion that also speaks of dragons. A great man and a dragon. Almost 2,000 years ago, a great conqueror traveled to faraway lands eager to explore and win glory. As his army marched through the green valleys and tall mountains of a foreign land, they discovered a hidden cave that almost seemed magical. The people living near this unusual cave spoke about a massive dragon inside, which they believed was a sacred creature. Well, as you could guess, a military guy with countless soldiers at his back made it impossible for him to pass up the opportunity to see if this was real or just a story. So as the conqueror and his army approached the cave, the villagers begged him not to harm the serpent. Remember, this creature, whatever it was considered sacred, so he agreed not to harm the creature and told his men to be quiet and approach the cave slowly as to not wake the beast. Then something surprising happened. The serpent, sensing the soldiers' presence, peeked out of the shadows. Its massive head appeared and it looked around with fierce eyes. When it hissed, the sound echoed through the valley, sending shivers down the spines of even the bravest of soldiers. Its eyes sparkled and made it look almost magical, and it's not surprising that this unusual creature was viewed as sacred to the people of this area. And this conqueror did as he said he would do and left the creature alone, and they went about their way. This person and his army that saw this dragon was actually Alexander the Great after he had invaded India in 330 BC. We could sum this all up to just being a tall tale, but you have to remember, at this time, a man's word was extremely valuable, and if Alexander had said he and his men saw a dragon or serpent, but they really didn't, then it wouldn't bode well for him. This one honestly just sounds very believable. A traveler in China. This one is rather short, but I think it's also this style of account that makes a bigger splash than long dramatic stories. There was a man who was a traveler and explorer at heart and had found himself in a foreign land. In this land, he wandered through markets selling an extremely rare meat that was said to be sacred and much more flavorful than any other. When he questioned what this meat was, he was met with the response of a dragon. While any sane man would scoff at the idea that this was actually true, he demanded proof of what it really was, to which the man pointed him in the direction of the king of the land. As his eyes gazed upon this powerful man, he saw that the dragons were indeed real. The king would raise dragons from hatchlings to pull his chariots and parades. This man was none other than Marco Polo when he lived in China for around 17 years, and these aren't the only stories of dragons. There are so many accounts of dragons all over the world. China itself has the longest running written history and speaks of dragons as though they were real at one point, which I personally do believe. Give me a second on my soapbox while I explain. You have China, Christianity, Islam, European paganism, Aztec gods, and countless other religions, cultures, and lands that all speak of giant serpents, worms, dragons, and everything in between. The idea that all of these cultures only speak about dragons as a way to understand the world is degrading to the people that hold a different opinion than you. Obviously, nobody that is alive now was alive 1,000 to 2,000 years ago when these creatures were encountered, and what I'm willing to bet is that just like grizzlies in California, these dragons and serpents and such were all wiped out in order to keep towns and cities safe, or they died out because they were no longer able to easily eat the way they wanted to before humanity organized itself. And you know, if you don't believe in these things, cool, you can have your own opinion, but you gotta stop acting like everything that sounds a little hard to believe is nothing but people's imagination. If people would listen and respect others' opinions, that would change a lot about the world. We'd feel more comfortable to share stories of odd encounters and proliferate information amongst each other. And if you know your history, this is gonna sound a little random, but you know two things. One, we were warned about the attack on Pearl Harbor and we didn't do anything. And two, we had enough information about the 9/11 attacks to do something about it, but because the FBI and CIA didn't want to share that, a lot of people died. And like I said, it's a little random that I mentioned that, but the point is that if we refuse to listen, others refuse to share, and if that's the point we're coming to in this world, then well,
I don't want to live on this planet anymore.
But anyway, back to dragons. I could rattle off a list of other encounters, but to make things easier on you and me, I'm just going to link a site in the description. Here's the deal when it comes to dragons. Were they fire-breathing beasts that could fly through the air? No, probably not. And in fact, it's kind of hard to find that depiction in any sort of actual historical context. It's actually just a bunch of quadrupedal and sometimes slithering serpents when they refer to dragons of any sort, so I'm not actually sure where this depiction of dragons came from. But what do you think? Did dragons exist at one point, or perhaps they still do exist? Either way, what we have here is an absolute mystery, and where mystery lies, adventure awaits. If you like what I do and you want to help support the channel, then the best way to do that is by joining the community on Patreon. I post my scripts and videos early, and I've even done a few videos that you can only find on Patreon. But if you're not into that, then just check out this video that YouTube seems to think you'll love, and I'll see you there.